Hey guys, tonight we slip back into a world of wooden ladders, damp straw, and the steady drip of rain that never seems to stay outside where it belongs. You're perched high on a crooked rooftop, mist hanging low in the morning air, your hands rough with splinters, your boots slick with dew. You probably won't survive this life. Between the shaky ladders, the angry villagers, and the roofs that collapse without warning. But don't worry, you only have to imagine it. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from tonight and what time it is there. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. The ladder wobbles under your weight, each rung pressing mud into the soles of your shoes. The morning air smells of smoke from last night's hearth fires. A little sour, a little comforting. Below you, a chicken struts around like it owns the place, tilting its head at you, as if judging your clumsy climb. The villagers say you're their thatcher, though it feels more like you're their excuse when the rain soaks their beds. You haul up a bundle of reeds, rough and damp, and wonder why medieval houses insisted on roofs that seemed allergic to dryness. A mainstream fact floats in your mind. Thatch was once the most common roofing material across Europe, cheap and abundant, though it came with a reputation for being a fire hazard. Villages could go up in flames quicker than an argument over who spilled the ale. Speaking of quirks, some households tucked bits of animal bone into the thatch, believing it kept witches away. Historians still argue whether people truly feared the supernatural, or if it was just a medieval form of neighborhood decoration, something like today's questionable lawn ornaments. The rooftop creaks beneath your knees. You feel the damp chill pressing into your clothes, the faint scratch of straw dust clinging to your skin. There's a rhythm to the work. Place, press, tie, repeat. It's not glamorous, and your hands blister faster than the thatch dries. A patch here, a patch there. But the truth is, even the best thatcher knows the leaks always win. You mutter about it under your breath, half a prayer, half a joke. Because if you don't laugh, you'll cry, or at least sneeze from the dust. For now, though, you carry on. The horizon glows faintly as the sun forces its way through cloud and fog. Another day of balancing high above the ground, weaving straw into a fragile shield against weather that never listens. The village stirs awake beneath you, the smell of porridge rising with the smoke. Your stomach growls, but your hands keep moving, because roofs don't wait, and neither does the rain. So if the quiet rhythm of straw, ladder, and creaking beams is lulling you into that soft edge of sleep, just let it. And before you drift too far, here's your gentle nudge. If this slow journey through history is something you'd like to return to, go ahead and like the video and subscribe. It helps keep the rooftops patched, at least in spirit. The tools feel heavy in your hands, though none of them are made of metal, strong enough to impress anyone today. You shift your grip on a wooden mallet, the handle smooth from years of sweaty palms, and you can't help but notice how much it resembles a child's toy hammer. Not exactly confidence-inspiring when your life depends on nailing reeds into place several stories above the ground. The bone needle dangles from your belt, long and oddly elegant, carved from cow shin. Its eye is big enough to thread twine through, and you use it like a giant sewing tool to stitch bundles of straw to the beams. You fumble with it constantly. Half the time it slips into the thatch, disappearing like a mischievous mouse. And then there are the knives, dull-edged but good enough to hack through reeds, provided you don't mind the uneven, frayed look. Let's be honest, nobody in the 14th century cared about clean lines. You lay the tools out on a rough plank, listening to the faint sound of a dog barking somewhere in the village. The mallet thuds against the wood as you test its weight. The truth is, this collection of objects is more hazard than help. Medieval safety standards are, to put it mildly, non-existent. A ladder is really just two long branches tied together with uneven rungs. It creaks as if begging for retirement every time you climb it. If you drop a tool, it doesn't bounce. It plummets. Villagers scatter instinctively when you're working overhead, though some like to joke you're secretly aiming at them. There's a comfort, though, in the rhythm of tools that never change. For centuries, across most of Europe, thatchers used almost the same set: a knife for cutting, a mallet for driving, a needle for binding, and a sickle for trimming. No fancy machines, just your own clumsy balance and stubborn will. Historians point out that some regions preferred hazel rods to secure the thatch, while others favored willow. It depends on what grew nearby and how picky the guild was about proper technique. You're not sure about the proper way, only that if it holds through the next rain, the villagers will grumble a little less. Of course, quirky details always surface. One story you've heard passed around the alehouse insists some thatchers carried charms in their toolkits, little bags of dried herbs, or even a pebble scratched with runes slipped into the rafters as they worked. Supposedly, it kept roofs strong and storms away. Historians still argue whether this was genuine belief or just clever marketing to get villagers to pay a little more for blessed roofs. Imagine someone today trying to upsell you with premium enchanted shingles. You'd laugh, and probably still pay if the leaks stopped. The bone needle gleams faintly as the morning light grows stronger. You push it through a bundle of straw, the twine tugging tight against your palm. The knot bites into your fingers, leaving little red grooves. You blow on your hand and shake it off, telling yourself you'll develop calluses soon. Though truthfully, after years of this, you've developed calluses upon calluses, layered like tree rings, each one a quiet record of rainy days spent crawling across rooftops. You jab your thumb again, curse softly under your breath, and then grin. Another battle scar, another mark of a roofer's life. Down below, the blacksmith bangs on his forge, and you can't help but glance enviously at his glowing coals. At least he gets to work by the fire. You're stuck under the shifting sky, your tools always damp, your twine always fraying. Still, there's a certain pride in knowing roofs make or break a village. Without them, every storm would undo months of labor. Your work is the line between warm beds and soggy misery. Sure, nobody thanks you, but secretly you know they depend on you, even as they mutter about the leaks. The mallet fits into your palm as you give a bundle a final thump. A neat sound, wood on reed, low and hollow. It's satisfying in its own humble way, like tapping a ripe melon at the market. You laugh quietly, wondering when the last time was that you had an actual melon. More likely an onion, and some stale bread await you for lunch. Not exactly the fuel you need when you're swinging hammers on rickety beams. And speaking of food, it's easy to get distracted thinking about it while working. Picture this. You're perched on the roof, needle in one hand, straw scratching your arms, when suddenly the smell of baking bread wafts up from the baker's shop. Your stomach growls so loud you swear the chicken below hears it. You imagine falling off the roof just to land closer to that smell. Joke's on you, though. You'd probably just land in the mud pit near the pigsty. A softer landing, maybe, but not one anyone would envy. Your knife hacks at another bundle, slicing unevenly through the reeds. They fall apart in your lap, a messy pile of dust and stems. You sigh. Scoop them together and try again. It's moments like this that remind you how unglamorous history truly was. Sure, paintings show noblemen in fine halls, tapestries on the walls, glowing hearths, but they don't show the roofer outside, squinting through straw dust, swatting away flies, and silently questioning all his life choices. You wouldn't look good in a tapestry anyway. Too much sneezing. Still, there's comfort in the tools, however awkward they are. They connect you to centuries of workers who climbed, stitched, and hammered in the same way. Maybe some of them slipped, cursed, and cracked a rib, but they still got back up, because roofs don't build themselves. You glance at the needle again, wondering if a future historian will find one buried under a collapsed cottage. They'll dust it off, write a paper, and argue endlessly about whether it was ceremonial or practical. Historians still argue whether half the artifacts we dig up were used every day or just saved for festivals. Meanwhile, you use it to stab straw for 10 hours straight. Practical enough. The ladder shifts slightly under you, reminding you how precarious your perch really is. You tighten your grip on the mallet, mutter a prayer you don't quite believe, and press on. The tools are clumsy. The straw is stubborn, and your back aches from bending, but it's what you know. And for a strange, fleeting moment, there's peace in that. The world narrows down to mallet, needle, straw, twine. Place, press, tie. Repeat. Somewhere, a bell rings from the church, echoing across the village square. It reminds you the day is long, your tools will ache in your hands by dusk, and tomorrow will bring the same routine. But for now, perched in the gray light of morning with your humble kit laid out before you, you carry on. You strike, stitch, and sigh, a roofer with the world balanced precariously on twine and straw. The thatch itself is never simple. You reach for a bundle of straw, reeds still damp from the morning mist, and feel the coarse texture scratch against your palms. You stack them in a crooked row, tying them down with thin strands of twine that fray and threaten to snap at the worst moment. Each bundle is heavy, heavier than you'd like, and the moment you lift it above your head, the weight doubles, pressing into your shoulders until your muscles twitch with protest. Still, you push on, because the art of thatching is not about elegance. It is about repetition, about weaving chaos into something that might keep the rain outside a little longer than yesterday. You kneel on the roof, balancing carefully so you don't slide down the slick slope, and start to weave. It is less like stitching and more like wrestling. The reeds resist, bending in directions you never intended, and your mallet smacks them into place with dull thuds that echo faintly through the rafters. There is rhythm here, though. You layer each row over the last, thick enough to shed water, but thin enough that the beams do not buckle under the load. You mutter to yourself, repeating the steps like a prayer. Lay, press, tie, trim, and then again, lay, press, tie, trim. A fact comes to mind, one the monks like to remind everyone of when they lecture about order and harmony. Properly laid thatch could last up to 30 years if maintained. 30 years in theory, but rarely in practice. Villagers never stop poking at the roof, pulling bits for kindling, or letting chickens scratch at the eaves. You are lucky if your work survives a decade. That does not stop you from aiming higher, even if you know the odds are stacked against you. You tuck a crooked reed into place, smack it with the mallet, and wince as a cloud of dust bursts into your face. You cough quietly, blinking through the irritation, and brush straw out of your beard. You wonder if this is how you will look forever. Dusty, itchy, a sneeze away from tumbling off a roof. You laugh softly at the thought. If portraits were ever painted of roofers, they would need an entire extra jar of brown pigment just to capture all the dirt. Below, children gather near the base of the house, pointing and whispering. They are not impressed by your skill, only curious whether you will fall. You throw them a grin and waggle the mallet, pretending you might drop it. They squeal and scatter, only to creep back moments later, emboldened. You shake your head. Kids in every century are the same, fascinated by disaster. But you keep weaving. The straw makes a hissing sound as you drag bundles across the wood. You press them flat, layering carefully so rain slides off like scales on a fish. That is the trick. Water must always find its way downward, never inward. If you angle wrong, the roof becomes a sponge. The villagers do not forgive sponge roofs. They never say, "Thank you for trying." They say, "Why is my bed wet?" And they say it loudly. A quirky tidbit floats in your mind. Some households placed dead eels or fish heads into the thatch, claiming the oils repelled insects. You are not sure if it worked, but the smell alone probably drove most things away. Historians still argue whether these strange additions were practical or superstitious, but from your perspective, either way, it is one more odd job for a roofer. You once pulled a half-rotted carp out of a roof beam and nearly gagged. The owner insisted it kept beetles at bay. You wanted to insist it kept neighbors at bay too. The sun creeps higher, drying the roof bit by bit. You wipe sweat from your forehead, leaving a streak of straw dust across your skin. Your back aches already, though it is not even midday. Still, you keep going, finding small satisfaction in each neat row. It is like a song without words, a steady beat of mallet and twine. For a moment, you imagine yourself not as a weary laborer, but as an artist, weaving golden strands into a living canvas. Of course, that illusion breaks the moment another cloud of dust fills your nose. You sneeze so hard you nearly topple backward, catching yourself with one hand on the beam. Your heart thumps as you steady your balance. You mutter a joke under your breath. The roof tries to throw me off before the rain does. No one laughs, except maybe the chicken still circling below. You tie another knot, tugging it tight until your fingers burn. Twine bites cruelly, leaving faint cuts along your skin. You imagine the scars lining your hands like a secret map, each one pointing to a roof that fought back. The straw prickles against your wrists, sharp edges catching the tender skin. It is not painful, exactly, just relentlessly irritating. Like being stung by 1,000 tiny nettles that never fade. Yet there is calm, hidden in the monotony. You find yourself moving slower, breaths deep and even, as though the rhythm of the work matches the rhythm of your heartbeat. You think about how thousands of roofers before you must have felt the same. Bent, dusty, tired, but steady. Work that never ends becomes a kind of meditation. You look across the village and see other rooftops, each with its own scars and patches. Some sag, some shine in the morning light. Some are already sprouting moss. A reminder that every roof has its own story, every cottage its own struggle against the weather. You are just one roofer among many, yet the village relies on you more than they admit. Without your weaving, their sleep would be colder, their nights noisier, their mornings damp. You smile faintly at that thought, unsung, but essential. Still, the imperfections nag you. A crooked line here, a gap too wide there. You tap it again and again, as though more hammering might fix the unevenness. It never quite does. The roof is like life itself, messy, patched, never perfect, but somehow still holding together. You sigh, resigned. and let it be. Tomorrow, someone else will complain anyway, and you will climb again. Tools clattering, straw scratching, heart heavy, but hands busy. The breeze picks up, ruffling the straw in your lap. It carries the smell of sheep dung from the fields, mixing with smoke and bread. A perfectly medieval perfume, sharp enough to sting your eyes, but familiar enough to soothe you. You breathe it in and chuckle softly. Who needs candles when the entire countryside smells like this? And so you keep weaving, keep hammering, keep tying, even as the day drifts on. The art of thatching is not glorious. It is not comfortable, but it is yours. And for now, it is enough. The clouds gather, gray and heavy, curling across the sky like a lid lowering over the village. You tilt your head, a straw bundle balanced precariously under one arm, and sigh because you know what is coming. Rain. Again. The enemy of every roofer, more determined than any guild rival, more unforgiving than the angriest villager. You press your knees harder into the roof beams, clutching the straw as the first drops splatter down with a sly hiss. You think about how weather has always been the ultimate landlord. A fact settles in your mind, the so-called Little Ice Age, which historians generally mark from the 14th to 19th centuries, brought colder, wetter conditions across Europe. Crops failed, rivers froze, and you, poor roofer, faced endless calls for repairs. Snow slid down roofs like batter off a pan, pulling straw loose and leaving yawning gaps. Summer storms ripped thatch clean off in gusts, tossing it like confetti across the fields. You don't need records to confirm it. You live it. You tug another knot tight, but the rain mocks you by dripping through the unfinished section. One drop lands squarely on your nose, then another on your hand. You mutter a complaint, though no one listens, not even the heavens. The roof always loses, and you know it. There are curious remedies whispered around the village. Some people smear clay over the straw in hopes of sealing leaks. Others mix mud and horsehair, daubing it between gaps until the roof looks less like protection and more like a sculptor's rejected project. One eccentric farmer insists that rubbing onion skins into the thatch will repel water, though you strongly suspect it only repels neighbors. Historians still argue whether these odd experiments had any lasting benefit, or if they were simply born of desperation. The storm builds. Wind claws at your sleeves, rattling your ladder against the beams. You curse softly and lean low, clutching the roof like it might fling you off at any second. The straw squeaks under your hands as it soaks, the golden sheen darkening to brown. You slap it flat anyway, as though defiance alone might keep the rain at bay. A useless gesture, but it makes you feel less like surrendering. Another crack of thunder rolls across the hills. Somewhere, a dog howls. Children scream gleefully, chasing each other through puddles. And you, hunched above them, wonder what kind of fool climbs into storms to fight water with straw. You laugh quietly at yourself. Occupational hazard, you mutter, or occupational comedy. The fact remains, roofs are always temporary victories. The rain always wins. Even when you manage a near-perfect job, water finds a path, trickling along beams, dripping through rafters, collecting in bowls strategically placed beneath. Villagers mutter, shake their fists, and blame you. You want to tell them, "Do you expect me to fight the sky?" But you know better. They don't want reasons, they want dryness. Your mallet feels heavier with each swing, wood slipping in your damp hand. You bang another reed into place, cursing at its refusal to lie flat. A gust tears your cap from your head and whirls it into the mud below. You groan, knowing you'll never see it again. The cap joins the great pile of roofing casualties, lost tools, bruised egos, and dignity dripping out one drop at a time. Yet there's a strange rhythm in battling weather. The sound of rain pattering on straw creates a steady lull, almost musical. Each drop is a note, each gust of wind a deep drumbeat. You think, for a sleepy moment, that this is the lullaby of roofers, the song of struggle and surrender. And though you may complain, it is oddly soothing. Lightning flashes across the sky, followed by another clap of thunder that shakes your bones. You grip tighter, muttering half a prayer, half a sarcastic quip. If I survive this, someone owes me more than onions for pay. You grin despite yourself, because jokes keep you steady when the roof doesn't. The rain continues, soaking your clothes until they cling, heavy as lead. You imagine yourself weighed down so much you might sink right through the rafters. But you don't stop. Bundle after bundle, you press, tie, hammer. The storm may rage, but you work anyway, because roofers don't get the luxury of waiting for clear skies. By the time the sun shines again, half the village will already be shouting at you about leaks. So you push on, shoulders burning, hands raw, heart stubborn. The weather will win eventually, but not today. Today, the roof holds, for now. The villagers gather below, arms crossed, faces tilted up toward you, with the grim expression of people who firmly believe every problem in their lives begins and ends with their roof. You balance on the beams, the mallet dangling loosely in your hand, and you can already hear the complaints drifting up like smoke. A woman points toward her chimney, muttering about how the rain dripped into her stew last night. A man swears his bed is wetter than the pond where his geese swim. And of course, someone else insists their roof squeaks louder than the church bell whenever the wind blows. You sigh, because no matter how carefully you layer each bundle of thatch, the villagers will always blame you when water finds its sneaky path inside. You lean down and call out that roofs are not magic, but the wind steals your words. And besides, no one really listens. Instead, they shout louder, waving their arms as though complaints could fix leaks faster than twine and straw. You bite back a laugh at their earnest fury. The truth is, they are not entirely wrong. Medieval houses leak. That is simply their nature. But admitting that never helps. A mainstream fact runs through your thoughts. In many medieval towns, people lived in timber-framed houses with wattle and daub walls, and thatched roofs were the cheapest option. They were warm, renewable, and surprisingly good at insulation. But perfect? Never. Rain and rodents, birds and bugs, all seem to love thatch as much as the humans living underneath. You try to remind villagers of this, but they prefer simpler logic. If the stew is soggy, it must be your fault. A quirky tale you once heard makes you chuckle under your breath. Supposedly, some households trained cats to live up in the rafters to chase away birds that tried to nest in the straw. The image makes you grin. A row of cats prowling along beams, glaring down at families, while rain drips beside them. Historians still argue whether this practice was real or simply one of those exaggerated stories told to entertain travelers. You think it sounds plausible enough. After all, if cats keep barns free of mice, why not keep roofs free of sparrows? Though it does raise the question of how much fur must have ended up in the soup. The villagers shout again, and you know from long experience that arguing will only prolong the chorus of complaints. Instead, you nod sympathetically, as though each word is brand new information, and promise to check the problem later. That phrase, check the problem, buys you at least a day of peace. Of course, you cannot check everything. Half the time, the leaks come from beams rotting or gaps where walls pull away. Problems no amount of straw can fix. But villagers don't want technicalities. They want reassurance. So you give it, even if you know tomorrow they will be back. Shouting once more, you climb down for a moment, the ladder creaking under your boots, and stand among them. Their voices buzz like flies, overlapping into a tangle of complaints. One woman swears the roof leaks directly onto her pillow. Another swears her husband is lying just to avoid sleeping in their bed. You cough politely and point out that you've patched her roof twice already this month, but she waves her hands and insists the problem must be you, not the straw. You shrug and let it pass. After all, you have no real defense. The truth is, roofers are the perfect scapegoats. When rain falls through beams, no one blames the carpenter who built the crooked frame, or the family who failed to maintain the chimney. They blame you. You climb the roof, therefore you control the weather, at least in their eyes. You chuckle at the irony. If you could truly control the weather, you would be napping under a sunny sky, not crouching under drizzle while villagers count every drop. You haul another bundle of thatch onto your shoulder and make your way back up. The children giggle, chanting nonsense songs about leaky roofs, while their parents scold you with furrowed brows. You settle into the rhythm again, straw scratching your neck, twine biting your fingers. The villagers mutter, watching, waiting for you to slip. You wonder if they are rooting for you to succeed, or secretly hoping for a fall, just so they can gossip about it at the alehouse tonight. The wind shifts, carrying the smell of smoke from the baker's oven. For a moment, the complaints blur into background noise, like distant bees. You focus on the steady thump of the mallet, the hiss of straw sliding into place, the tug of twine as you knot it tight. There is a calmness in ignoring the noise below and working with your hands. You smile faintly, because though they complain endlessly, the villagers still need you. And in their need, there is a quiet kind of respect, even if they never say it aloud. Still, you cannot help poking fun at them in your thoughts. One man, red-faced and puffing, swears his roof leaks every time he sneezes. You picture him standing in his cottage, sneezing dramatically just to prove the point, shaking his fist at the ceiling while his wife rolls her eyes. Another woman insists her roof creaks because a spirit lives inside it. You wanted to tell her it creaks because the beams are warped, but you held your tongue. Sometimes superstition is easier than the truth. The sun breaks briefly through the clouds, a pale disk casting light on the wet rooftops. You pause, squinting at the sight. The village shimmers, puddles gleaming like scattered coins. For a moment, even the complaints fade, replaced by the simple beauty of a world washed clean by rain. You breathe deeply, filling your lungs with damp air, and allow yourself a small smile. Then, inevitably, another villager shouts, "Oi! There's still a drip above my hearth." You roll your eyes, grip the mallet, and keep working, because in the end, that is all you can do. Work, patch, and endure. The villagers may never be satisfied, but without you, their nights would be colder, their stew wetter, and their gossip far less entertaining. And so, you climb, you hammer, you tie, the complaints swirling below like a chorus you've long since stopped listening to. You may be their scapegoat, but you are also their shelter. One bundle of straw at a time. Your payment arrives not with coins that clink, but with goods that bruise if you drop them. You sit on a worn bench outside the alehouse, straw dust still clinging to your sleeves, while a villager presses a small sack of onions into your lap, as if bestowing royal treasure. You peek inside and try not to laugh. 5 onions, 3 already sprouting green shoots, 1 soft enough to squish between your fingers. Still, payment is payment, and you nod solemnly, as though you have just been handed the key to the kingdom. The truth is, wages for roofers rarely come in silver. A mainstream fact rings in your head. In much of medieval Europe, barter remained common even into the later centuries. Money circulated, yes, but villagers often relied on trade because they simply did not have enough coinage to spare. So you, the roofer, get bread, onions, eggs, and occasionally the luxury of salted fish. Coins are reserved for taxes, tolls, or bribes, never for workers like you. You accept it, because arguing accomplishes nothing, except maybe getting fewer onions next time. One man once tried to pay you with a chicken. He shoved the bird into your arms with a grin, declaring it fair compensation for 3 days of labor. The chicken squawked indignantly, flapping until you nearly dropped your mallet. You kept it for a week, listening to its clucks each morning, before trading it to the blacksmith for a rusty knife. A short-lived fortune, but it made for an amusing story at the alehouse. Historians still argue whether barter was a symptom of poverty or simply a practical choice in tightly knit communities. You lean toward both. After all, you cannot eat coins, but you can roast a chicken. You bite into a hunk of bread given as part of another payment, the crust hard enough to threaten your teeth. You chew slowly, imagining that perhaps this is what stone tastes like. Still, it fills your stomach, and that is enough. You dunk it into weak ale, softening it slightly, though the flavor remains closer to sour dust than delight. You joke to yourself that if bread gets any staler, you will use it as a roofing tool. Better than twine, tougher than straw. Children watch from a distance, whispering about how you never seem to carry real money. They are not wrong. Your purse is as light as your belly is often heavy. Yet you remind yourself that survival counts more than riches. The onions may stink, but they last longer than a coin tucked away in some lord's treasury. Sometimes villagers try to pay you in favors instead. A farmer promises extra hay for your donkey, though you do not own one. Another insists he will let you cut reeds from his pond, anytime, which is generous, except you already cut them there last week. You smile, nod, and accept, because refusing generosity in a village is more dangerous than the roof work itself. Reputation matters. One sour word spreads faster than the rain. Still, you daydream about coins. The feel of cool silver between your fingers, the sound of it dropping into a pouch. It is a fantasy more than a reality. You imagine strolling into the market with jingling pockets, buying meat instead of bones, honey instead of onions. You laugh quietly at yourself. Roofers and wealth rarely meet. At best, you scrape enough to keep boots on your feet and straw above your own head. At worst, you end up patching your own cottage with leftovers from jobs, muttering that even the roofer sleeps under leaks. A quirky tale you once overheard makes you grin. Supposedly, one roofer in a distant town demanded payment in beer barrels, and the villagers agreed. He worked diligently for a month, patched every roof in sight, then drank himself into a ditch and never returned. His story floats around as both warning and comedy. You suspect parts are true. Beer is tempting currency, but you cannot imagine carrying barrels up a ladder. Your stomach growls as you finish the last crust of bread. Payment may be meager, but hunger makes everything taste better, even when it shouldn't. You lick crumbs from your fingers and remind yourself you have onions waiting for supper. Onion soup, onion stew, onion with a side of onion. A diet that makes you smell like your own wages. You chuckle softly. wondering if anyone has ever written a poem about it. Ode to the Roofer's Onion. Probably not. The villagers pass by, some nodding politely, others pretending not to see you. They know you are essential, yet they treat you like the straw you work with. Useful, replaceable, easily overlooked. You try not to take offense. At least they pay you something, even if it is only the occasional carrot or wheel of questionable cheese. You remember once being given a jar of honey as payment. You treasured it for weeks, savoring tiny spoonfuls each night, until you dropped the jar in your cottage and watched it shatter across the floor. You sighed, scooped what you could onto bread, and pretended it was intentional. You glance at your mallet, resting beside you, and shake your head. The tool that holds roofs together, the thing that keeps villagers dry, is rewarded with onions and stale bread. You joke to yourself that perhaps you should start demanding softer jobs, like polishing pewter spoons, though you know the pewterers probably get paid in onions too. The sun dips lower, painting the village in tired gold. You rise, sack of onions swinging at your side, and begin the walk back to your cottage. Each step kicks up dust, mixing with the smell of animals and smoke. You breathe it in, equal parts resignation and familiarity. Payment may never change, but the rhythm of it keeps life moving. Work, patch, barter, eat, work again. As you near your cottage, you glance at your own roof, sagging slightly under the weight of years. A drip echoes in your mind, though you cannot hear it yet. You laugh softly, because of course the roofer's own house leaks. It is tradition, really. You step inside, toss the onions on the table, and strike a match to light the hearth. The room glows faintly, shadows dancing on walls, patched with as much straw as mud. You sit, stretch your weary back, and bite into another piece of stale bread. Payment secured, for now. Tomorrow, another roof waits, another sack of onions, another complaint shouted from below. And somehow, despite the absurdity, you find comfort in it. This is your trade, your rhythm, your place in the world. Soggy stew, soft onions, and all. The church bell tolls, echoing across the village like a hollow warning, and you glance upward at the towering steeple looming above the cottages. Its spire pierces the sky, slate gray and solemn, daring anyone foolish enough to climb it. Today, that fool is you. You adjust the strap of your tool bag, grip the ladder's worn rungs, and mutter to yourself about saints who clearly never worried about falling. The villagers gather near the base, craning their necks, whispering wagers on whether you will reach the top or tumble halfway. Nothing like community spirit to inspire confidence. You place one boot on the ladder, then another, the wood groaning under your weight. Each rung feels thinner, each gust of wind sharper as you ascend. The higher you climb, the more the ground blurs into a patchwork of thatched roofs, muddy lanes, and people who look like beetles scurrying below. Your stomach tightens, though you try to laugh it off. If I fall, at least the view was free, you whisper, gripping tighter. Church roofs are different beasts from cottages. A mainstream fact floats through your mind. Medieval churches were often the tallest structures in their towns, not only symbols of faith, but also of wealth and civic pride. To keep them standing, communities poured resources into their upkeep. And who ends up patching their lofty peaks? You, the roofer, dangling like a spider from the heavens. The irony is not lost on you. You reach the ledge beneath the steeple and pause, catching your breath. The stone is cold under your hands, rough and pitted from centuries of rain. You shift your mallet, careful not to let it slip. Dropping a tool here would not just crack skulls. It might knock a villager straight into sainthood. You smirk at the thought, though you quickly sober as a gust rattles your balance. The thatch around the lower church roof is weathered, straw curling outward like unkempt hair. You crouch, tying a bundle into place, but your focus drifts to the carvings around you. Angels frozen in stone stare with blank eyes, wings eroded into vague lumps. You mutter, "Watch over me, will you?" Though the angel offers no reply. A quirky tale comes to mind, one you once heard in the alehouse. Supposedly, a roofer in another town slipped while patching a church spire and landed miraculously unharmed, thanks to falling into a dung cart passing below. Villagers called it divine intervention, though you suspect it was just luck and manure combining in absurd harmony. Historians still argue whether miracles like that were recorded faithfully or simply invented to encourage piety. You lean toward the latter, but you admit a soft pile of dung would be better than the stone street yawning beneath you. You tie another knot, fingers trembling from the cold wind. Every movement feels exaggerated at this height, every slip magnified. Your breath comes shallow, the air thinner, your heart hammering in your chest. Yet there is strange peace in it too. The village spreads below like a miniature world. Fields, cottages, smoke curling from chimneys, even the river winding like a silver thread. You whisper that perhaps saints did worry about falling, but they just had better roofs. The villagers below shout something, their words carried upward by the wind, though you cannot make them out. Probably urging you not to drop straw on their heads, or maybe cheering you to hurry so the rain doesn't baptize the entire congregation again. You wave absent-mindedly, then return to weaving bundles, pressing them flat with rhythmic mallet thuds. Each sound echoes strangely, swallowed by the vastness of the sky around you. Your knees ache from crouching on the stone. You stretch one leg, shake it out, then immediately regret loosening your stance. The roof tilts menacingly, and you scramble to plant both feet firmly again. Your laugh is shaky, nervous, but genuine. Occupational comedy, you murmur, the phrase that has become your personal motto. The hours stretch, each bundle a small victory, each knot another heartbeat. You imagine the saints above watching with mild amusement, perhaps wagering whether you will last longer than the last roofer. You think about writing a prayer specifically for roofers. Grant us steady ladders, dry straw, and villagers who complain quietly. It probably wouldn't catch on, but the thought makes you smile. By midday, the sun peeks through clouds, warming your stiff fingers. You pause to sip from a flask of weak ale, the liquid sharp against your tongue. You lean back slightly, careful not to slip, and let the breeze wash over you. There is beauty in this precarious perch. You see further than anyone else in the village, fields rolling toward the horizon, birds wheeling lazily, even a cart trundling down the distant road. For a brief moment, you feel less like a tired laborer and more like a guardian watching over your world. Of course, reality intrudes. A crow lands nearby, cocking its head, eyeing your straw bundles as though they are a feast. You wave your mallet, muttering threats, but the bird only hops closer. You laugh despite yourself. Even up here, I can't escape critics. The final bundles go into place with satisfying rhythm. Your mallet thuds, straw hisses under your fingers, twine tightens until it bites. The church roof no longer looks like a tangle of weeds, but a smooth golden slope, neat enough to satisfy even the most judgmental villager. You wipe sweat from your brow, letting it mingle with dust on your skin, and lean back to admire your work. For a moment, You forget the complaints, the bartered onions, the endless leaks. For a moment, you are simply a craftsman who has defied gravity and weather to leave something beautiful behind. The bell tolls again, vibrating through the stone beneath you. You flinch, gripping the beam, half expecting the whole spire to shake loose. But it holds, as it always does, as it will long after you climb down. You whisper a thank you, though whether to saints, ladders, or dumb luck, you are not sure. The descent is slower, more cautious, every rung a negotiation with gravity. Villagers wait below, shading their eyes, murmuring as you finally set foot on solid ground. Someone claps you on the shoulder. Another thrusts a hunk of bread into your hand. Payment, gratitude, or just habit. You cannot tell. You only smile, aching but satisfied, knowing you have survived another climb. And tomorrow, of course, another roof will wait. Maybe smaller, maybe taller, but always leaking, always demanding. You shoulder your tools and shuffle away, already imagining the straw dust clinging to your skin and the quiet comfort of an onion supper. The castle looms on the hill like a giant stone puzzle, its walls patched and jagged, its towers leaning ever so slightly as though tired of standing guard. You trudge up the slope, tools thumping against your side, bundle of straw biting into your shoulder. The guards at the gate eye you suspiciously, spears crossed, until you mutter the magic phrase, "Roof repairs." At once they grin, as if the thought of nobles sleeping under leaks delights them. They wave you through, their laughter following you across the drawbridge. Inside, the courtyard buzzes with noise, horses clattering hooves on cobbles, servants carrying baskets of bread, a blacksmith hammering somewhere in the shadows. You pause to take it in. Castles may look magnificent from a distance, but up close, they sag and leak just like cottages. The difference is scale. A peasant complains of one dripping corner. A noble complains of entire banquet halls turning into ponds. And somehow, both expect you to fix it by magic. You climb a narrow stairway spiraling up one tower, ducking your head to avoid the low ceiling. Your boots scrape against stone steps worn smooth by centuries of feet. At the top, a guard leads you out onto a walkway where the roof spreads before you, a vast expanse of thatch stretched across beams thicker than tree trunks. From here, the wind tastes sharper, carrying the smell of smoke from the kitchens and manure from the stables. You sigh, shift your mallet, and get to work. A mainstream fact flits through your mind. Castles were notorious for being cold, drafty places. Even with massive fires blazing in the hearths, heat escaped through gaps in walls, chimneys, and of course roofs. Nobles wrapped themselves in furs and complained endlessly, while servants scurried to patch the drafts. You remind yourself that your job, though thankless, keeps entire halls of nobles from shivering through their feasts. A nobleman's gratitude may be rare, but his need is constant. The thatch up here is no better than that of cottages. Birds have nested in the eaves, straw has blown loose, and rainwater has carved dark streaks down the walls. You tug free a rotten bundle, tossing it over the edge, where it flutters down like a sickly scarecrow. Somewhere below, a servant yelps as it lands too close. You call out a half-hearted apology, then return to tying fresh reeds in place. The work is the same as always. Lay, press, tie, trim. Only the scale changes. A quirky tidbit drifts into your thoughts, making you smirk. Some castles experimented with moss gardens on rooftops, believing the greenery would add insulation. You can picture it now. lords strolling proudly through their dining halls while above, sheep graze on the roof. Historians still argue whether this was clever design or misguided landscaping. Either way, you are grateful no one has asked you to herd goats up here. The wind buffets you, tugging at your sleeves, making each step across the beams a careful dance. You crouch low, mallet striking in steady rhythm, trying not to think about the sheer drop yawning beside you. Below, the nobles stroll through the courtyard, oblivious to your struggle. You imagine them sipping wine, gossiping, perhaps even mocking the roofer dangling above their heads. You shake your head, half amused, half resentful. You keep them dry, yet they treat you as background noise. Still, you work, because background noise is often what holds the world together. By midday, the sun shines briefly, casting golden light across the thatch. You pause to wipe sweat from your brow and glance out across the countryside. Fields stretch to the horizon, dotted with cottages whose roofs you have patched. From up here, the village looks small, fragile, yet somehow enduring. You chuckle softly. Roofers like you might never be remembered in chronicles or songs. But without your endless patching, the stories would have been drowned long ago. The sound of footsteps draws your attention. A steward appears, robes flapping, nose wrinkled in distaste, as if the mere sight of straw offends him. He clears his throat and announces that the Lord expects the hall roof finished before tonight's feast. You bow your head politely, though inside you laugh, as if straw bends to deadlines. You return to hammering, muttering under your breath that nobles should try climbing a roof before setting timetables. You push another bundle into place, the straw scratching your wrists, dust filling your nose. You sneeze so hard, your mallet nearly slips, and you catch it just in time. Your heart pounds, but you laugh quietly. Imagine that, you think, the Lord's feast interrupted by a falling roofer. Not exactly the entertainment they expected. As the afternoon drags on, your muscles ache from constant crouching. You shift position, stretching your back, and glance down at the courtyard again. Servants scurry with platters of bread, buckets of ale, crates of fish. The bustle below seems endless, yet strangely comforting. Everyone has a role. Some cook, some clean, some fight, some build. And you patch roofs so their labor isn't soaked by rain. The work continues in silence, save for the thud of mallet, hiss of straw, and whistle of wind. You fall into rhythm, almost hypnotic, until the roof looks smooth once more. The gaps are filled, the edges neat, the golden surface gleaming in the late sun. You lean back, wipe your dusty hands on your tunic, and smile faintly. For now, the castle is dry. For now, the nobles will feast in warmth. For now, you have won another brief battle against the sky. You climb down slowly, each rung a relief, until your boots touch solid stone again. The steward nods stiffly, pressing a hunk of cheese into your hand. Payment secured. You chuckle softly, shaking your head. Another feast overhead, another onion and cheese supper for you. You tuck the food into your sack and make your way toward the gate, shoulders aching, heart oddly light. Because whether for cottages or castles, whether for peasants or lords, your trade is the same. One bundle of straw against the endless sky. The market square hums with noise, a patchwork of smells and shouts and footsteps echoing off crooked timber walls. You wander in slowly, straw still clinging to your clothes, the mallet knocking against your hip like a wooden heartbeat. The villagers glance at you, some with polite nods, others with smirks, as though remembering the latest tale of one of your roofs dripping onto someone's supper. You know the routine. Every corner of the market hides gossip, and most of it includes your name. You weave between stalls, selling everything from carrots to candle stubs, the air thick with smoke from roasting meat, and the tang of fish barely fresh. A boy chases a goose through the crowd, its wings flapping wildly, scattering straw from a sack someone dropped. You laugh softly, because somehow even at the market you cannot escape straw. You pause at a bread stall, eyeing loaves so hard they could double as building materials. You wonder whether the baker might secretly be your competition. A mainstream fact drifts into your thoughts. Medieval markets were more than places to buy goods. They were social theaters, spaces where news, bargains, and scandals mixed freely. Villagers came not only to trade, but to trade stories, to whisper rumors, to argue over who owed whom a bushel of barley. And here you are, walking target for half their tales. You overhear one man swearing that your patch on his roof lasted barely a week, though you know he used half the straw for firewood. Another insists you are secretly rich, hoarding onions until you can buy your own manor. You grin at that one, if only onions translated into castles. You pause at a stall of fabrics, fingering coarse wool dyed in muted colors. The merchant squints at you, unimpressed, likely guessing you cannot afford even a scrap. He's not wrong. You nod politely and shuffle on, drawn instead to a spice cellar with jars of mysterious powders. A quirky tidbit surfaces. Some households sprinkled herbs into the thatch, believing strong smells deterred pests. You imagine roofs that smelled like cloves and cinnamon, as though the house itself was baking. Historians still argue whether this practice worked or whether it just made the rodents hungrier. You picture mice nibbling roofs like gingerbread cottages, and the thought makes you chuckle under your breath. Children cluster around a fiddler near the well, clapping off beat, shrieking with joy. You watch for a moment, leaning on your mallet like a walking stick, half tempted to join in. But you know better. A roofer dancing in the square would become the day's headline, retold until you could never show your face again without someone humming the tune. Instead, you slip toward the ale stall, buying a cup of thin beer with a handful of onions. The merchant sighs but accepts, grumbling that onions don't jingle like coins. You agree silently, sipping the bitter liquid as you drift deeper into the crowd. The gossip grows louder near the butcher's stall. A group of women argue about whose roof leaked most during last night's storm. They list names, descriptions, even imitations of dripping noises. Your ears burn, but you keep walking, pretending not to notice. It is part of your trade. You patch, they gossip, and somehow the leaks remain the real celebrities. You laugh quietly, because in a way, the roofs themselves are more famous than you'll ever be. You stop at a stall selling pottery, staring at bowls glazed with dull earth tones. One cracks under the weight of the merchant's hand, and you shake your head. Even pottery, it seems, leaks. Perhaps everyone should just live in barrels. You imagine yourself offering deluxe barrel roofing next season. It might even leak less than thatch. The sun climbs higher, warming the square, though the wind still carries the sharp tang of dung from nearby pens. You breathe deeply, strangely comforted. Markets smell like life, messy and unfiltered. You sip the last of your beer, grimacing at its sourness, and glance once more around the crowd. Everywhere you look, stories are being told. Traders boasting, neighbors bickering, children laughing. And threaded through all of it is your invisible work, your rooftops holding quietly above their heads. A bell rings faintly from the church, signaling midday. You turn toward home, mallet swinging loosely at your side, stomach rumbling. Behind you, the market keeps buzzing, another chorus of voices rising. You know tomorrow they will still gossip about leeks, still bargain with onions, still mutter your name as though you control the clouds. You shake your head, smiling faintly. Let them gossip. You'll still be the one climbing ladders tomorrow, patching roofs while they argue. And as you walk back through the crooked lanes, straw dust clinging to your sleeves, you wonder if perhaps that is your true payment. Not the onions, not the bread, but the quiet certainty that without you, the market's gossip would have nothing to feed on. The alehouse door creaks as you push it open, the smell of smoke, sweat, and stale beer rolling out like a wave. You step inside, shoulders sagging from a day of balancing bundles, and let the dim light swallow you. The rush of voices is immediate. Laughter, arguments, songs half sung, the scrape of stools across uneven planks. You find your usual spot near the wall, where the bench tilts slightly, and ease yourself down, grateful for the chance to rest. The ale arrives without asking, a wooden mug shoved into your hand on the innkeeper's daughter, who grins knowingly. She has seen you stagger in enough times, straw stuck in your hair, dust coating your sleeves. You raise the mug in thanks, sip the weak, sour liquid, and sigh as the coolness slides down your throat. It is not fine wine, but it soothes sore muscles and makes the noise blur into a tolerable hum. A mainstream fact drifts into your thoughts. Alehouses were central to medieval village life. They were not only places to drink, but also spaces for community meetings, gossip, and even informal courts. Villagers spent evenings here discussing harvests, marriages, feuds, and of course, who had the leakiest roof. You smile wryly into your mug, because even here, under the smoky rafters, your trade follows you. The bench creaks as another man sits beside you, slamming down his own mug. He launches into a story about how his neighbor's chimney collapsed, nearly flattening a pig. You nod politely, though inside you wonder if tomorrow you will be asked to climb yet another death trap to fix it. Across the room, a group of farmers laugh too loudly, slapping the table as they retell a tale about your last near fall from the church roof. You groan softly into your drink. Even your near disasters become public entertainment. A quirky tidbit floats to the surface of your mind. Some medieval taverns were rumored to water down ale with pond water, claiming it gave earthy flavor. You imagine villagers cheerfully drinking what was essentially swamp soup, none the wiser. Historians still argue whether this was exaggeration by moralists or genuine practice. You chuckle quietly, glancing at your own mug, half convinced there might be a frog lurking at the bottom. The fiddler in the corner strikes up a tune, his bow scraping across strings that squeal more than sing. Yet the room joins in, stomping boots, clapping hands, voices rising into a raucous chorus. You tap your finger against the mug, smiling despite yourself. The rhythm seeps into your tired bones, a reminder that even weary workers can forget leaks and ladders for a while. Someone tries to pull you into the dance, but you wave them off. A roofer dancing would be too easy a story for tomorrow's gossip. The night deepens, the fire crackles, and the air thickens with warmth. You lean back, eyes half closed, listening to the overlapping conversations. One man swears his field yielded double grain because he sprinkled ashes in the furrows. Another insists he saw a fox steal a goose and carry it across the river on its back. The stories grow more absurd with each refill, and you find yourself chuckling quietly. The alehouse is a theater, and every drinker is both actor and audience. You overhear your own name again, this time in connection with the castle roof. A farmer mutters that nobles feast dry thanks to you, while peasants still sleep under leaks. You bristle at first, then shrug. The truth is, nobles complain louder and pay quicker, though pay often still means onions or stale bread. You take another sip and let the complaint wash past. Better to be talked about than forgotten entirely. The innkeeper thumps down a platter of cheese and bread, scraps for those who can't afford more. You tear a piece, chew slowly, and imagine it as a feast. Hunger sharpens even the dullest flavors. You grin at the thought. If anyone could turn stale bread into treasure, it is a roofer after a long climb. The fiddler changes tune, softer now, and voices drop to murmurs. The alehouse quiets in waves, like a sea calming after a storm. You sip the last of your drink, lean back against the wall, and let your eyelids droop. For a moment, you imagine staying here forever, wrapped in warmth and noise, never climbing another ladder, never patching another roof. But you know morning will come, and with it, more leaks, more complaints, more straw scratching at your hands. You chuckle quietly, finishing the last crust of bread. The alehouse may not fix roofs, but it fixes moods, at least for a while. You push yourself up, joints creaking, and nod to the innkeeper on your way out. The night air greets you, cool and damp, carrying the smell of smoke and earth. You walk slowly through the dark lanes, footsteps echoing, until your cottage looms ahead. Crooked, but standing. Inside, the roof creaks softly, whispering reminders of your own leaks. You laugh into the shadows, shaking your head. Even roofers cannot escape dripping ceilings. You stretch out on your pallet, pull a rough blanket over yourself, and close your eyes, the faint hum of the alehouse still buzzing in your ears. For now, at least, you sleep dry. Winter arrives like a hammer, sudden and unrelenting. And the roofs that managed to survive autumn rains now groan under the weight of frost. You trudge through snow that crunches beneath your boots, each step heavier than the last, the cold biting through every layer of wool you wear. Your mallet feels like a block of ice in your hand, the twine stiff, the straw brittle. You shake your head, muttering about how no roof in the world truly survives January. A mainstream fact presses into your thoughts. During the harsh winters of medieval Europe, fires burned almost constantly inside cottages, both for warmth and for cooking. The irony was that while the fires kept families alive, sparks often leapt into the thatch, turning entire houses into blazing torches. Winter, therefore, was not only a season of freezing drafts, but also a season of accidental infernos. You pause at one cottage door, eyeing the wisp of smoke curling from the chimney, and wonder whether today's job will be patching leaks or smothering embers. The villagers greet you with their usual blend of desperation and irritation. One woman insists frost cracked her beams. Another swears icicles formed indoors. A man claims snowdrifts blew right through his walls. You nod patiently, though inwardly you wonder whether half of them exaggerate just to vent their misery. Cold makes everyone dramatic, including roofers. You glance at your own hands, red and raw, and sigh. If their stew is freezing, your fingers are practically icicles. You climb the ladder anyway, boots slipping on rungs slick with frost. Each breath fogs in the air, drifting like smoke as you hunch against the roofline. The thatch crunches under your weight, hard and stiff. The straw so cold, it snaps when bent. You try to tie a bundle, but the twine refuses to bend. more like frozen wire than rope. You huff in frustration, muttering about how even tools join in the conspiracy of winter. You think of a quirky remedy you once overheard in the alehouse: villagers stuffing warm ashes into thatch to melt the ice and keep leaks from forming. The idea sounds clever until you picture sparks smoldering, setting the whole roof aflame. Historians still argue whether people truly tried such desperate tricks, or whether these tales were cautionary jokes passed along for laughs. You hope it was a joke, though judging by the number of singed beams you've seen, perhaps not. The wind cuts across the rooftop, sharp as a blade, forcing you to crouch lower. Snow swirls in tiny whirlwinds, sticking to your lashes, numbing your face. You work slower now, fingers stiff, joints aching, but you keep moving. Place, press, tie, trim. The rhythm is sluggish, but it continues. You mutter half-hearted jokes just to hear your own voice against the silence. "If the roof doesn't fall, I will," you say, chuckling dryly at your own humor. Down below, children throw snowballs, shrieking with laughter. One flies wide, smacking into the side of the ladder. You curse softly, steadying your grip, while the children scatter in guilty giggles. You shake your head. Snow is entertainment for them, torment for you. Each flake that falls is another reminder that roofs are losing battles in this season. By midday, your body aches, your hands throb, and your nose drips. You pause to sip weak ale from a flask, though it is so cold it tastes closer to ice water. You swallow anyway, grateful for anything to keep your throat wet. Around you, the world lies muffled under snow. The village hushed except for the occasional bark of a dog. You look out across the fields, bare and white, and feel a strange calm. The silence of winter is unforgiving, but also beautiful in its stillness. You resume work, trimming frozen reeds, hammering stiff bundles. The mallet's thuds sound dull, muted by snow. You imagine yourself as part of a strange symphony, wind howling the melody, snowflakes the percussion, your mallet the steady beat. It is absurd, but the thought keeps your mind from freezing over entirely. Another villager shouts up to you, claiming the snow inside his cottage is thicker than the snow outside. You laugh and call back that at least he doesn't need to shovel his roof. He doesn't laugh, but you do, shaking your head at your own joke. Humor is thin, like the ale in your belly, but it warms you nonetheless. The day drags on, shadows lengthening across the snow. You finish one patch, then another, though you know the cold will undo your work within days. Frost creeps into beams, cracks forming like veins, snow sliding into gaps you can't see. Roofers fight endlessly, but winter always wins. You mutter this truth under your breath, not bitter, just resigned. As evening falls, you climb down carefully, boots numb, joints stiff. Villagers thank you half-heartedly, pressing a turnip into your hand as payment. You nod, though inside you laugh. You risked frostbite for a root vegetable. You tuck it into your sack and trudge home, breath clouding the air, body aching. At your own cottage, the roof groans under snow. You glance upward, shake your head, and smile faintly. Even your house complains in winter. Inside, you light a small fire, hang your damp clothes near the flames, and sit with the turnip in your lap. Supper may be thin, but warmth is enough. Winter miseries may never end, but you survive them, one roof at a time, one freezing step after another. And perhaps that is all anyone can do. Patch what leaks, endure what cannot be fixed, and laugh quietly when snow sneaks in anyway. Strange remedies float through the village like smoke, whispered from cottage to cottage, each one promising to banish leaks more effectively than the last. You arrive at a job one morning to find the homeowner proudly waving a handful of onion skins, insisting you tuck them into the thatch. You raise an eyebrow, trying not to laugh, but he explains with deadly seriousness that the skins repel rain. You nod politely, push them into a bundle, and carry on, knowing full well the only thing they'll repel is the neighbor's nose when they rot. A mainstream fact comes to mind. Medieval people blended practical knowledge with superstition constantly. Herbs dried in bundles, bones buried beneath thresholds, charms scratched into beams, half medicine, half magic. And roofing was no exception. The line between patching a hole and warding off evil spirits blurred so easily, you sometimes wonder if your real job is roofer or amateur priest. You grin at the thought, smacking a bundle into place with your mallet, whispering a sarcastic blessing under your breath. One old woman swears frog bones slipped into the eaves will keep storms away. You recall crouching on her roof, sliding brittle little bones into straw, while she stood below, muttering incantations. You asked what would happen if you forgot the bones. She glared and said lightning would strike the cottage instantly. Historians still argue whether villagers truly believed these rituals worked, or whether they used them as bargaining chips to coax extra care from workers like you. Either way, you complied, because arguing with superstition is a waste of breath. The bundle of straw scratches your wrist as you tie another knot. Dust fills your nose, and you sneeze so hard you nearly topple sideways. You mutter a joke to yourself. Maybe I'll add sneeze charms next season. No one laughs, except perhaps the chickens scratching at the ground below. You shake your head, grinning despite the irritation. There are stranger requests still. Some villagers insist you smear pig fat along the ridges to keep leaks out. Others hand you little bags of herbs, sage, rosemary, thyme, telling you to hide them in the thatch. One man once demanded you place a carved wooden charm shaped like a fish into the beams, declaring it a gift from the river spirit. You did as told, though you wondered whether the charm's real job was to give villagers something to blame when the roof leaked again. You pause, sitting back on the ridge, straw dust clinging to your clothes, and glance at the horizon. Superstition feels heavy sometimes, heavier than the bundles you carry. You know straw and twine cannot conquer storms, yet villagers cling to rituals as if their lives depend on it. Perhaps, you think, belief itself holds power, not against rain, but against despair. If charms make people feel safer, maybe they do their job after all. The wind rattles your ladder, shaking you from your thoughts. You return to work, weaving another bundle, pressing it flat with the mallet. The sound echoes faintly through the beams, a dull rhythm, steady and grounding. You tie the twine, tugging it tight until it bites your skin. Another row complete, another layer of straw shielding the family below. Onion skins, frog bones, charms or not, the real shield is your hands, your rhythm, your persistence. Still, you collect the stories, storing them like treasures. At the alehouse, you retell them with gentle sarcasm. Listeners laugh, shaking their heads, though some secretly nod in agreement. A roofer becomes not only worker, but storyteller, weaving myths into his work as carefully as straw into a roof. You sip ale, grin into the foam, and remind yourself that laughter is its own kind of charm. Once, late at night, you patched a roof under moonlight because the owner insisted daylight angered spirits. You climbed quietly, breath fogging in the chill, The village hushed around you. The moon lit the straw silver, shadows long and eerie. You half believed for a moment that perhaps the spirits truly watched. You muttered a sarcastic blessing, just in case. The roof held through the storm, and the owner swore your midnight work saved his family. You didn't correct him. Sometimes faith needs no argument. You chuckle softly now, thinking of all the strange additions tucked into rooftops. Onion skins, frog bones, fish charms, herbs. It is as if the entire village pantry lives above their heads. If roofs were to collapse, archaeologists centuries later would puzzle over the debris, writing papers about ritual offerings and magical practices. Historians still argue whether such finds are practical waste or genuine ritual. You laugh, imagining them uncovering a roof stuffed with carrots and onions, declaring it a shrine. The afternoon sun dips, casting long shadows across the village. You finish the last bundle, tie the knot, and sit back, breathing heavily. The roof gleams golden in the light, smooth for now, neat for now. You glance at the onion skins tucked discreetly into one corner, shake your head, and smile faintly. Let the villagers believe their charms matter. You know the truth. What keeps the rain out, at least for a while, is your stubborn hands, your aching back, your endless patience. You climb down slowly, boots creaking on the ladder, and greet the homeowner. He thanks you, pressing a small bundle of dried herbs into your hand as payment. For your own roof, he says. You nod, pocket the herbs, and walk away, wondering whether they'll keep leaks away or just flavor your stew. Either way, it feels like a fair trade. That night, you sit by your hearth, straw dust still clinging to your skin. You toss the herbs into the fire, watching them crackle and release their sharp scent. The smoke curls upward, filling the room with warmth. You lean back, close your eyes, and let the fragrance soothe your weary bones. Magic or not, sometimes it is enough just to believe. The guild hall is nothing grand, just a crooked timber building at the edge of the square, yet it looms in your mind like a fortress of rules. You push the door open and step into the smoky gloom, where roofers from nearby villages gather, voices low, eyes sharp. Rivals sit across the benches, their straw-dusted clothes identical to yours, their mallets resting within reach like weapons. You nod stiffly, settling onto a bench, knowing that every glance carries both familiarity and hostility. Guilds, a mainstream fact reminds you, became increasingly important across medieval Europe by the 13th century. They regulated trades, set prices, limited competition, and provided something resembling protection for their members. In theory, they defended roofers like you from unfair treatment. In practice, they also dictated when, where, and how you could work, often with as much pettiness as power. You tug at your sleeve, already bracing for arguments. The master roofer clears his throat, reading out complaints from villagers. One man claims his cottage collapsed because the thatch was too thin. Another insists someone stole half his straw before the roof was finished. You smirk quietly, because you know the culprit. Rival thatchers often sneak into bundles left overnight, borrowing just enough to sabotage a competitor. It's a dirty trick, but one you've seen more than once. You glance toward a man across the hall, whose smirk mirrors your own. Guilty, though never caught. Quirks of the trade surface here as often as in the rooftops themselves. One rumor tells of a thatcher who slipped charms of carved wood into every roof, claiming they ensured loyalty from the family. The catch? He returned months later, pointing at leaks, and declaring the charms must have been disturbed, unless, of course, they rehired him. Historians still argue whether guild rules allowed such schemes or punished them. You lean toward the first. After all, clever tricksters often flourished under the guild's blind eye. The meeting drags, accusations flying like straw in the wind. One roofer claims another undercut his price, offering repairs in exchange for a jug of ale instead of the agreed fee of bread and onions. Voices rise, fists slam onto tables, the air thick with smoke and tension. You roll your eyes, muttering a quiet joke to yourself. If only they fought leaks with such energy. The roofer beside you snorts with laughter, quickly covering his mouth. Your turn comes when the master mentions a complaint from the castle steward. Supposedly, one patch leaked onto the lord's banquet table. All eyes turn toward you. You raise your hands, insisting you finished that roof properly, but the steward lit only half the hall. Rain found the dark corner, not your knots. The room mutters, some nodding, others sneering. Rivalry is a constant storm here. You defend yourself calmly, though inside you simmer. To them, every drip is an opportunity to drag you down. Still, there is camaraderie in rivalry. When the meeting breaks, you share ale with a man you argued against moments earlier. Straw dust clings to both of you. The same cuts line your hands. The same ache bends your backs. You swap stories of ladders breaking, of roofs collapsing mid-job, of chickens heckling from below. Laughter spills out. Tension softens. You realize that rivals or not, you all fight the same endless battle against rain. As evening falls, you leave the hall, mallet tapping against your leg. The air outside feels fresher, freer. You glance back once, the crooked guild building leaning in the twilight, and smile faintly. Rivals may steal straw, insults may fly, but the work remains the same. Roofs leak, villagers complain, and you climb again. The guild is just another roof, crooked, patched, imperfect, yet somehow still standing. The summons arrives not in a polite knock, but in the heavy clatter of hooves. A messenger on horseback rides through the muddy lane, splattering villagers as he shouts for the roofer. You step outside, blinking against the afternoon light, straw still clinging to your tunic. The messenger thrusts a scroll into your hands. Sealed with wax, you are almost too nervous to break. But you know what it means. A noble wants you. A castle, or perhaps a manor, needs repair. And somehow, your name landed on the list. You sigh, tucking the scroll into your belt, and begin preparing for a climb that will pay in dignity, not comfort. You trudge up the hill toward the estate, your mallet bouncing at your side, your sack of straw bundles digging into your shoulder. The manor rises ahead, stone walls stretching wide, towers jutting like broken teeth. Servants hurry in and out, carrying buckets, sacks, and trays, their glances toward you quick and dismissive. You are here to work, not to dine, and they know it. You follow the steward through echoing corridors, your boots squeaking on the damp flagstones, until he points upward toward the great hall roof. A leak has dripped straight onto the lord's dining table. Of course, a mainstream fact runs through your mind. Noble halls were often immense, with high timber beams supporting vast roofs that echoed every draft. They were symbols of wealth, but their size made them magnets for leaks. No amount of grandeur could change the fact that straw still bends and rots. You tilt your head, staring up at the beams, and wonder how many servants have cursed under their breath while bailing out puddles during feasts. You climb the scaffolding, joints aching. while servants glance up nervously, perhaps fearing you will drop straw into their cooking pots. The roofline curves steeply, the ridge wide enough to host a parade. You kneel, mallet in hand, and begin pulling away at thatch, rotten. Dust rains down, mingling with the smell of roasting meat from the kitchens. You shake your head, muttering that nobles eat feasts while you eat straw dust. The bundles here are larger, tied more tightly, but no less vulnerable. Birds have wormed their way into the ridges, building nests with the finest straw. You tug one loose, scattering feathers, and mutter a soft apology to the absent chicks. You picture them hatching straight into the Lord's soup if you had left them there. A quirky tidbit makes you grin. In some noble estates, exotic materials like imported reeds or even heather were added to the thatch, believed to repel water more effectively. You can almost hear the lords boasting about their luxury roofs. Historians still argue whether these materials worked any better than ordinary straw, or whether nobles simply liked the idea of fashionable thatching. From your view, all roofs rot the same, no matter how expensive the bundle. The work stretches through the day. You hammer, tie, and weave, the rhythm steady against the backdrop of laughter rising from below. Nobles dine, their voices carrying through the hall, while you sweat and cough above them. Your stomach growls at the smell of spiced meat, but you press on, muttering about onion suppers awaiting you at home. You imagine barging into the feast, demanding a slice in exchange for each bundle of straw. A joke, of course, but the thought carries you through another hour. As you work, a group of children wander into the courtyard, pointing up at you with wide eyes. They whisper about the strange man climbing their roof, as though you were some exotic bird yourself. You wave the mallet playfully, and they squeal with delight before being shooed away by a stern servant. You grin, shaking your head. Even in noble houses, children look at roofs the same way, half in awe, half in hope of seeing you fall. The sun dips lower, shadows stretching across the beams. You finish the last row, tugging the twine tight, smoothing the straw with the flat of your hand. The roof glows golden in the fading light, neat and orderly. You lean back, breathing deeply, satisfied despite the ache in your knees. Below, the steward shouts for you to descend, eager to declare the hall dry again. You climb down slowly, every rung a relief, until your boots touch the courtyard. The steward nods curtly, pressing a small pouch into your hand. You open it later to find a handful of coins, rare, glittering, almost foreign in your palm. You smile faintly, though you know they will soon vanish, spent on food, tools, and perhaps a mug of stronger ale. For now, though, the weight of silver feels like proof that your hands matter. You walk home under the stars, coins jingling, the smell of noble feasts lingering in your nose. You chuckle softly, whispering to yourself that castles may rise high, but even lords cannot dine dry without a roofer's weary hands. The ladder groans as you climb again, though this time your legs are heavier, slower, joints stiff from years of work. You mutter under your breath, not at the roof, but at your own body, how it protests with every step. The mallet feels heavier than it used to. The twine cuts deeper into your palms, and the straw scratches more than it ever did before. You laugh softly, though it comes out closer to a wheeze. Even my tools have outlasted me, you joke, shaking your head as you haul another bundle up. Accidents are no strangers in your trade. A mainstream fact comes to mind. Injuries among medieval laborers were so common that many simply worked through broken bones, since hospitals were rare and expensive. Roofers in particular carried scars, twisted fingers, and limps earned from years of slips and splinters. You remember your own missteps, the times you slid halfway down a roof before grabbing a beam, heart hammering. Each scar on your hands tells its own small story. Reminders that roofing is as much survival as skill. There was the time the ladder cracked beneath you, sending you tumbling into a dung heap. Villagers laughed for weeks, retelling the tale until even you chuckled at it. Another time, a beam splintered, stabbing your leg deep enough that you limped for months. You remember patching your own cottage with the same bandages you used on the beams, wrapping your thigh as though you could stitch yourself together like straw. Historians still argue whether medieval workers were reckless or simply resigned to danger. From your seat on the roof, you know the answer. Both. Quirks of survival show themselves everywhere. One roofer you knew swore by soaking his boots in pig fat, claiming it kept them from splitting on icy ladders. Another tied charms carved from wood to his belt, insisting they kept him steady. You once tried carrying a charm yourself, a smooth stone with a hole through its center. Did it work? Perhaps. Or perhaps you just held it so tightly you forgot about falling. Either way, the stone still sits on your shelf, dusty but unthrown. The work resumes despite your aches. You crouch, tie, hammer, press, slowly now, carefully. Each motion feels deliberate, heavier, but steadier too. You know the rhythms better than you know your own breath. Place the bundle, tap it flat, tie the knot. The roof becomes your anchor, even as your body creaks in rebellion. You laugh again, softly. The roof may collapse before I do. Down below, villagers watch with familiar unease. They whisper about your age, about whether this job might be your last. Children giggle, pointing, chanting little rhymes about roofers who fall asleep on roofs. You shake your head, smiling despite yourself. You have heard worse. You adjust your grip on the mallet, ignoring the stiffness in your wrist, and swing again. The sound echoes across the village square, proof that you still hold steady. You pause, sitting back on the ridge, staring at the horizon. The fields roll outward, dotted with cottages whose roofs you have patched a dozen times. Each one holds a piece of you. Splinters, sweat, laughter, curses. You wonder if future roofers will climb the same beams, finding your knots, muttering about the stubbornness of your twine. You hope so. You hope the roofs outlast your bones, your name woven quietly into their dust. The wind rises, sharp against your face. You steady yourself, gripping the ridge, heart pounding. For a moment, the world tilts, and you imagine slipping. But you catch your breath, steady your hands, and laugh softly at the absurdity. Not today, you whisper. The roof creaks, the straw hisses, but you remain. By evening, the patch is done. You climb down carefully, each rung an ache, each step deliberate. Villagers nod politely, some clapping you on the shoulder, others pressing bread into your hands. Payment may be meager, but their eyes carry gratitude, unspoken but real. You accept it with a tired smile, shoulders sagging, but heart lighter. Injuries and slips may test your patience, but you return again and again, because the roofs wait, and without you, they fall. The thought begins quietly, as you patch yet another leak with straw, scratching your skin, and twine biting your hands. It hums at the edge of your mind, louder with each bundle tied, each knot pulled. Escape. You imagine stepping down from the ladder, not to fetch more reeds, but to keep walking. Past the cottages, past the fields, past the gossip and onions. You picture leaving the tools behind, letting the mallet rest where it lies, never to thud against straw again. Daydreams carry you far while your hands keep working. You imagine trade first, the most practical escape. A mainstream fact circles in your thoughts. Markets grew in size and complexity during the later medieval period, offering merchants chances to travel between towns, carrying cloth, spices, or metal goods. You picture yourself among them, leading a donkey burdened with wares instead of straw, shouting prices instead of curses at the rain. Would you thrive? Perhaps. Or perhaps you'd discover trading is just roofing with more walking and fewer ladders. The fantasy shifts to pilgrimage. So many villagers save for years to walk to holy sites, feet blistered, but hearts lifted. You imagine yourself trudging alongside them, not carrying bundles, but prayers, chasing relics instead of roofs. The thought feels soothing. Miles of road instead of rungs of ladders, open skies instead of dripping beams. Historians still argue whether pilgrims sought true faith or simply adventure. You suspect it was both. You would not mind a little of either. Quirks slip into your visions. A tinker once told you he escaped roofing by claiming to repair pots. He laughed, showing hands just as scarred as yours. His work took him door to door, carrying stories as much as tools. You chuckled, wondering whether you could swap straw dust for soot. Would villagers complain less if their stew burned rather than leaked? Probably not. Your hands ache as you tie another knot, and the dream shifts again. You imagine a dry bed, a cottage not patched by your own weary hands but built of stone, solid and firm, untouched by leaks. No straw scratching at your neck, no twine cutting grooves into your skin. Just walls that hold, a roof that remains silent during storms. You laugh softly at the impossibility, shaking your head. A roofer longing for a dry house is like a fish longing for dry land. Yet the longing lingers, stubborn. You lean back on the ridge, staring at the sky. Clouds drift lazily, white against blue, indifferent to your grumbles. Somewhere beyond them lies a world without roofs, or at least without your roofs. You picture traveling to towns where no one knows your name, where villagers do not whisper about leaks or throw onions into your hands. You imagine standing at a market stall, telling tales of roofs rather than patching them. Stories are lighter than straw. The roof creaks under your weight, snapping you back. You press another bundle into place, steadying your thoughts. The truth is, escape is tempting, but fleeting. The village depends on you, whether they admit it or not. Children sleep drier because you climb ladders. Families eat warmer meals because you patch leaks. Nobles feast without raindrops, splattering their bread because you risk beams high above. You sigh, knowing even your fantasies carry the weight of straw. Still, you allow yourself small rebellions in thought. You picture waking tomorrow and simply walking away, feet carrying you down the road, mallet abandoned on a cottage step. Would they chase you? Would they call after you, begging for roofs? Or would they simply shrug, find another unlucky soul, and begin their complaints anew? The uncertainty makes you grin. Perhaps the greatest freedom is not caring about the answer. A rooster crows below, strutting along the fence line, feathers gleaming in the light. You watch it for a moment, envious of its arrogance. Chickens never patch roofs. They peck, they crow, they strut. No one demands they stop leaks. You mutter a joke to yourself. In my next life, I'll be a chicken. The thought lingers, absurd but comforting. The day drags, your body aching, Yet your mind keeps wandering. You imagine foreign lands, markets bustling with spices, streets paved in stone, roofs tiled instead of thatched. You imagine wandering through them, nameless, unnoticed, free. Historians still argue whether medieval wanderers were adventurers or beggars. Perhaps both. Perhaps you would be both. But even beggary might feel lighter than endless straw. You finish the patch, sit back, and wipe sweat from your brow. The roof gleams for now. Another temporary victory. You glance at the ladder, wondering whether to descend or to step past it entirely, climb down the far side, and keep walking until the village disappears behind you. Your heart beats faster at the thought, though your feet remain planted. The sun dips lower, shadows stretching across fields. Villagers stir below, voices rising, calling children, fetching water, shouting at animals. The ordinary rhythm of life continues, and you remain on the roof, half worker, half dreamer. You smile faintly, shaking your head. Escape may be fantasy, but fantasies are fuel. They soften the ache in your hands. They ease the stiffness in your back. They remind you that life is larger than straw. And maybe one day you tell yourself, when the ladder creaks too loudly under your weight, when your knees refuse to bend, when even onions taste too heavy, maybe then you will walk. Maybe then the road will stretch open, free of roofs, free of complaints, free of endless bundles. You imagine it clearly. Your mallet left behind, your sack empty, your steps carrying you away. Whether toward trade, pilgrimage, or simply a dry bed, you will walk. But not today. Today you press the last bundle, tie the last knot, and climb carefully down the ladder. Villagers thank you half-heartedly, press bread into your hands, mutter about leaks. You nod, smiling faintly, the daydream tucked safe inside your chest like a charm. Because sometimes, escape begins not with walking, but with imagining. And you imagine well. The night falls, stars bright against the dark. You sit outside your cottage, bread in hand, and gaze upward. The roofs you patched today rise around you, crooked but holding, leaking but standing. You sigh softly, smiling despite yourself. Dreams may whisper of roads, but tonight, the straw is enough. The years settle into your bones like dust into rafters, slow but certain, until climbing ladders feels more like defiance than duty. Your knees ache with every rung, your shoulders creak when lifting bundles, and your hands tremble when gripping twine. Still, you climb, because the village expects it, and the roofs never stop leaking. Each step is slower now, yet each knot tied carries a strange weight of memory. You press straw into place, and you remember the roofs of decades past, the laughter of children who are grown now, the complaints of villagers long buried. The roofs remain, patched and repatched, a living map of your life. You pause often, sitting on the ridge with your mallet across your lap, gazing at the crooked horizon. The fields stretch, the cottages smoke, the church bell tolls faintly. You smile at the familiar view, though it blurs more than it used to, your eyes weaker, your breath shorter. You think about how every roofer before you sat the same way, weary yet proud, staring across the same patchwork of straw and stone. Historians still argue whether craftsmen were celebrated or invisible. You know the truth. They were both, remembered in leaks and whispers more than in names. A mainstream fact surfaces in your thoughts. Life expectancy in medieval villages was far shorter than in later centuries, though those who survived childhood often worked well into old age. You chuckle softly at that, muttering, "I must be living on borrowed time then." Your hands bear the evidence, calluses layered like tree rings, scars tracing decades of ladders and beams. You touch the rough skin and grin faintly, proud despite the aches. Quirks fill your memories. You recall one villager who swore stuffing feathers into the thatch made it stronger. You obliged, though the roof ended up looking like a molting goose. Another demanded garlic hung in the rafters to ward off spirits. The smell drove him out faster than any ghost might have. You laugh quietly, shaking your head. Roofs are strange, villagers stranger, and roofers strangest of all, for agreeing to climb again and again. The ladder waits, yet you climb slower now, stopping often, pausing to breathe, pressing a hand against your back. You imagine one day you simply will not climb again. Perhaps another will take your place, a young man with eager hands and fewer scars. Perhaps he will curse as you once did, mutter jokes to himself as you still do, and perhaps he will dream of escape, as you often did. You smile at the thought, knowing roofs will always need someone stubborn enough to fight the rain. You sit again on the ridge, watching the sun dip low, painting the straw golden. The air cools, the village hums beneath you, the smoke rises in soft curls. You feel the weight of years, yet also the quiet of acceptance. The roofs may leak, your body may falter, but for now, you are here. A roofer in the fading light, surrendering gently to time. The night grows softer, the world slowing as though the air itself sighs. You lie back in your narrow bed, the faint creak of beams above blending with the hush of distant wind. The roof whispers its stories, raindrops that once fell, storms that once rattled, laughter that once echoed beneath. You let the rhythm wash through you, a gentle reminder that every leak patched, every knot tied, every weary climb was part of a larger song. Your breath deepens, steady, matching the quiet pulse of the room. The shadows stretch long, then fade into stillness, as though time itself has slowed to a comfortable crawl. Each memory drifts past like smoke, light and untouchable, carrying no burden, only calm. The aches in your body soften, the worries of the village dissolve. There is no more rushing, no more clambering ladders, only rest. Outside, the wind brushes softly against walls, carrying the scent of earth and straw, a lullaby of the life you lived. You feel its embrace, cool but kind, and let it carry you further into stillness. The roofs no longer need you. The rain no longer calls your name. You are free to drift, to sink, to rest. The world narrows to breath, to heartbeat, to the hush of quiet comfort. You surrender to it gently, allowing the night to cradle you. The journey is complete, the story told, the roof secure. Sleep folds around you like a blanket, and peace lingers, warm and certain.